So as you probably know, if you watched all of my videos, I probably didn't, but if you did, then you know that I was in Uzbekistan, and I am no longer in Uzbekistan right now. But here, I would like to talk about some things that surprised me about this country, and what I didn't expect. And the first of those things is that streets were very wide, buildings were very big, and I kind of expected it to look more pro. I didn't expect Borat's village. I know that wouldn't be the case. I know it's not Borat, but what surprised me that it looked much richer than I expected. It actually looked rich in many places, and it looked like the buildings, even the living buildings, they were like monumental. They were big. Everything was big. I was feeling like in St. Petersburg, and I was very surprised by it. So that's the first thing that really surprised me. The second thing that really surprised me, and also kind of connected to money, is how well organized it was. Because like the infrastructure was very good. It was very well organized, like infrastructure. Like there was tourist police like everywhere, and this kind of police, the purpose of them is like to keep tourists safe, to show them the directions, blah blah blah. And I saw more of tourist police than actual tourists, I think. Like I saw them everywhere. They were everywhere, and they were like, you could ask them, they were asking me, oh, did I get lost, do I know where to go, blah blah blah. And there were like guides everywhere. It was very easy to find a tour guide. It was quite difficult not to find them. They were like, oh, do you want to go on an excursion with me, blah blah blah. They were everywhere. It was very easy to buy a souvenir. They were also everywhere, and they were also kind of annoying because I was like, at some point, I already have those souvenirs. I just got I didn't I spent too much time away from countries where they have like more aggressive selling tactics. I got I got so used to sellers that do not push anything on me. So yeah, um, they were much more expecting tourists than I expected them to expect them. And everything was like, everything had a table and a name and a label. You could see, for example, you were walking next to some old building. You could read everything about this building. It was written. They were really prepared, and the trains were very fast. They go like 250 kilometers per hour. They are very new, and they were much better than in Europe. Like seriously, they would even wake you up on a train when they knew that your station is coming, because they have your tickets, so they see. Because the tickets, you choose the place, like on a plane. So they were like very prepared for tourists. But when it comes to English, they weren't so good. I mean, they were much better than Kyrgyzstan and Kazakhstan. And knowing that they opened just several years ago, like they opened like for a bigger amount of tourists. I mean, they made visas very easy to get in 2019, and then was Corona. And knowing that only 4 years have gone, that's very impressive. But English, maybe it was more difficult to learn English just in 4 years. So they spoke English more than in Kyrgyzstan and Kazakhstan. But a lot of people didn't speak English, and a lot of people who did speak English, like you would think that they do speak English, then you would say something and they wouldn't necessarily understand. Because later you would order, for example, something in English, you would get something else. It happened to me. So actually Russian is very useful. Because the English skills, probably, those few years that Uzbekistan was open, and also there was Corona, so maybe they didn't have so much time to practice English. They could buy new trains, they could make good infrastructure, they could employ so many tourist policemen, but they couldn't learn English. But I was actually impressed, because like they have to pay those people. They have to pay those people working in this sector, and because they were like and they were everywhere. So Uzbekistan had to spend a lot of money on improving tourism services. And when it comes to hotels, it was very easy to find a hotel. They were everywhere, and comparing to European prices, they were like very affordable. I would just book the cheapest hotels I could, and they had a very high standard. So I really don't complain, but actually this is something that I expected because I've been traveling outside of Europe, and actually Europe is really overpriced, especially like Western Europe where I live. It's like unbearable expensive, and it's basically five. That's why I I don't like staying in hotels when I don't have to in Western Europe. I always try to, you know, like either come back in late night, just not to stay in a hostel, maybe spend the night on a bus because hotels are so expensive there. So I expected much higher standard for much lower price because this is what you have outside of Europe. This is even what you have in Eastern Europe. So yeah. And another thing that really surprised me was, I will tell you a story. I went into a restaurant and I bought something, and then a waitress came to me and she smiled to me, and all of her teeth, or maybe most of her teeth, were golden. They were gold, and I didn't expect that. It was like, wow. Like, I was thinking that maybe, many years ago people used gold instead of like other replacements to heal the cavity in the teeth, in a tooth. But here, like, those teeth, they were golden. Even the teeth in the front, she had all golden teeth, and this is something very common in Uzbekistan. They have golden teeth. And not only in Uzbekistan, because later when I went to Kyrgyzstan and Kazakhstan, it's also the case. But I'm actually happy that they have teeth, because in some countries I met a lot of people with no teeth at all, and those people had teeth. They were golden, but they had teeth. And actually, I think it looks super cool when you have golden teeth. After going there, after seeing this woman like smile with this golden teeth, I was like, damn, I want such teeth, I was thinking, oh, maybe I can get golden teeth somewhere, because it's like, it's so cool, people would think that I am a mafia person or something like this, I really like it. So that's the thing that surprised me. I know that, for example, like, I think maybe in my grandma's times it was more popular to have golden teeth, so I was really surprised that right now people still get golden teeth somewhere. But they heal the teeth. They have dentists, so that's the most important thing. And another thing that surprised me, which was kind of a disappointment to be honest, is that it's not as cheap as I thought. Because online there's a lot of people claiming that Uzbekistan is the cheapest country in the world, and for me that's a very bold claim, because there's a lot of countries and some countries are very cheap. And if you come from a Western country, a lot of countries that are not Western countries will be very cheap to you. Even countries that are expensive for locals, that are expensive like in general, will be very cheap for you. Like for me, when I come from the Netherlands, when I go to Spain, Spain is cheap for me, because comparing to the Netherlands, Spain is cheap. But I know that Spain is not the cheapest country, and I know that there's a lot of countries cheaper than Spain. And a lot of people coming to Spain, they would say it's expensive because they don't come from the Netherlands, where they are used to extremely high prices for everything. So I was thinking, like, the cheapest country in the world? Really? Is it really the cheapest country in the world? And no, because when I came, like, I know countries that I have been to that were cheaper than Uzbekistan. Like, at least, maybe the prices, they are very different when it comes to different services, because when you buy food, it's actually very cheap. That's true. Food in Uzbekistan is very cheap. But for example, entry tickets, souvenirs, those things for tourists, they are not necessarily cheap. Maybe because they know that tourists, they have more money than locals. So those prices, they aren't that cheap. But because of those hopes that, those people gave me, I was thinking that maybe they aren't right, I had this suspicion, and unfortunately, I was right. But food, it was actually cheap. But I don't know if it's the cheapest in the world. I think that probably not. But souvenirs, definitely not. Entry tickets, they were cheaper than in Europe. But they weren't, when I had an entry ticket everywhere, it would sum up and was annoying when I had to pay for all that entry here and entry there, blah, blah, blah. And you had to pay for toilet, which was annoying, and the toilet was usually a hole in the ground. So it wasn't the cheapest. it was cheaper, much cheaper than Europe, but much cheaper than Western Europe, but it wasn't the cheapest. And there were like, on the other hand, those souvenirs, they were handmade, so it's, yeah, that's true, they were handmade, they were like high quality, but they could be cheaper. You know, so these are the things that surprised me about Uzbekistan. I hope you enjoyed. See you next time. Bye.